Welcome back everyone, and it's time to go balls deep. And today we are talking about My Hero Academia's latest chapter. And you know what I'm gonna say, right? Wait for it. The moral dichotomy.
Oi, 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 oi. Mate, mate.
Yeah, you thought I was going to say fire. And I'm not denying that, but let's be honest, this is our new favorite word for a whole year now regarding My Hero Academia. This chapter explores exactly what we stated last week regarding the growth of Deku's character reaching the ideals of being number one, as well as Lady Nagant's parallel to Hawk's. Balls Deep prediction quirk is always on point, and that's why you should hit the notification bell for our channel and smash that like button. If you don't, I'ma get Gojo on your ass, and no one wants Gojo on your ass. Oh wait, that sounds wrong. Oh shit. The chapter kicks off with Endeavor flying into the scene after receiving a call from All Might. As we know, All Might has become Deku's butler to his Batman, and he must look after the young man to surpass him. Deku got dripped now. You know my man's dripped out even. Did you see his face at the end of the chapter? My man's a grown ass man now.
So true.
Now, due to the rainfall, this obviously leaves Endeavor in a situation which weakens his flames, thus weakening him. In last week's chapter, we saw Lady Nagant explode as she changed her heart to kill Deku. She believes for Deku to be a true hero. As she was about to die, becoming fried like chicken, Hawks arrived saying, wait, I know how that feels like, but I'm dead. But Hawks isn't fully recovered from the damage his wings suffered in his fight against Darby. This restricted his flying capabilities to quite a large degree. This means Deku has to soften his landing with the last of his strength using Black Whip. This means both the number 1 and number 2 hero have had to rely on Deku to save and capture Lady Nagant and Overhaul. Think about that shit. My man Deku is truly becoming the symbol of peace. As you can see, it's the beginning of the shift in the hero rankings, leaving the stage floor open to Deku's generation to step up in the upcoming war against All For One and his little ass bitch ass minions currently causing havoc to society, which we've seen recently with young Midoriya, who as we know will eventually become the number 1 hero. You can go ahead and watch the video on your screen right now to find out more on just how exactly Deku will reach his goal of surpassing all those before him and becoming the number 1 hero. I completely break down the story of Deku's journey, so it's important we stay on the same page, especially since in chapter 316 Hawks is starting to realize this phenomena where he sees Deku go plus ultra by saving him and Lady Nagant no matter the cost, whilst also breaking down the situation with him. Hawks was the one that told Deku to run away from Lady Nagant if they encountered each other due to how powerful she is and that no one he knows can truly beat her. But now he's just witnessed Deku with the drip do the opposite by attaining victory and changing her heart. In chapter 316, Deku deduces the situation with Lady Nagant, coming to the conclusion that All For One actually implanted this deadly explosive inside her when he transplanted the airwalk quirk. By implanting his quirk factor, aka his DNA, into Lady Nagant during this transaction, he is able to track what she is thinking. He is essentially part of her consciousness. He can understand how she really feels, which is how he is capable of destroying her once her feelings had been swayed by Deku's heroic acts. And this is how he keeps his tyranny ongoing, because all his little bitch ass minions will be controlled as he knows what exactly they are thinking and feeling. Now Hawks quickly shifts his attention back to try to bring Nagant to consciousness, wailing in anguish, trying to convince her to come back and join the heroes, away from the manipulative hands of All For One, saying how her fight with Deku should have surely made her realize that the heroes she dreamed of as a kid do still exist, and by using her one-of-a-kind knowledge on All For One to help defeat him, she should become a hero again. Hawks, just like Deku, hasn't lost hope on how they can bring hero society back for the better by rebuilding it with the information Lady Nagant can provide to them. Suddenly, there is a light coming from Nagant as she starts to become consciousness. She's starting to realize, oh my god, this talk no jutsu and this sexy beast in front of me. Yeah, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say Hawks is some sexy bitch. Oh shit.
Oi, 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 oi. Mate, mate.
Yeah, she's realized this fine young man is in front of her. She brings her consciousness back. She looks at Hawks and realizes that it's her successor. She looks at his eyes and sees an untainted look. unlike she who was given unjust and cruel orders by the Hero Commission for the greater good of the people. She remembers the shining eyes she herself had as a little girl before losing her innocence, and witnesses this similar feeling within Deku and Hawks. After witnessing the true hero-like attribute Deku displayed by saving Overhaul with instinct and Hawks jumping in to save Lady Nagant even after her deeds, it seems like Nagant's embers which had faded away are being lit once again to become a hero. She thinks back to her time as a little girl looking up, imagining a better world, and speaks about how within the next 2 months Nagant was supposed to bring Deku to a mansion in Hibori Forest. She continues telling us that there are others beside her who All For One has asked to bring Deku to him. All of this is part of All For One's major plan of breaking down Deku's will and humanity so it's easier for him eventually to steal the quirk. This is a setup for the final arc of My Hero Academia. It's kind of like getting all the gym badges and then the Elite Four, and finally you meet the champion Shigaraki and All For One. Deku and the rest of UA students need more experience, and this is the perfect way to gain it through the storytelling. Especially with Endeavor and Hawks and the other top heroes quitting, and now we don't have All Might, some of them have died in the war, the kids need to step up. Lady Nagant continues referencing Hawks, telling him that the Hero Commission broke her. She just couldn't handle the brutality, so how is Hawks able to keep smiling on with those bright eyes? Hawks then replies saying that it was because he had someone to rely on. He always saw the good in the world and people. We see the imagery of Nagant as a child all alone in a room looking up to an ideal which was muddled and cheapened by the fragility of the Commission's ways. However, with Hawks, he is seen as a kid looking down to his Endeavor figure which is close to his heart, therefore symbolizing once again how Deku will be a symbol and my hero to the next generation, to reform society for the better, where they can rely upon him to uphold justice and to be a bright light within the darkness of the world. Lady Nagant never had anything to look at or feel justified in the peace she was upholding by her actions. Remember, she was questioning her own role as to whether or not she was a hero. This can be seen with how disgusted she was within herself, shaking hands with those kids in chapter 314. However, Hawks has his doll that represents the hero way, which he can always refer back to when straying away, as it is close to his heart. Remember, Hawks was an orphan whose father was a criminal. He was neglected but could still look at Endeavor as hope. Nagant loses her hope whilst Deku is trying to give it back to her. Moving on to Endeavor, he has Core Overhaul, who wants to meet his old man, as Nagant promised she would take him to his adopted father. He just wants to apologize to him. Deku tells Overhaul that he will uphold Nagant's promise to Overhaul to meet his father. Now this is a pretty interesting moment in Deku's development. He is actually committing to his speech, putting action to his words. Remember the speech he had with the Vestiges in chapter 304. He is saving the villains. He tried to do this against Muscular in their second bout in chapter 311, but Muscular, being a crazy bastard that he was like, bruh, I just like doing this, I like killing people. And Deku's like, what? I can't do speech no jutsu on this crazy bastard, and he banged him in his head, right? Now this situation with Nagant and Overhaul, it's different. Nagant was basically a plot device to show us Deku's resolve after chapter 304, similar to Overhaul as he had more connection and backstory with him. Deku promised to take Overhaul to his boss because he wants to apologize. However, Deku's job as a hero isn't finished, as Overhaul hasn't realized the hurt and pain he had caused Eri all those years. Overhaul will likely be taken to his boss by Deku and will realize the pain and suffering Eri had to go through because of his actions, and finally asks for her forgiveness. Eri is following the path of a hero herself and will likely heal the very hands Shisaki used to cause her abuse in the past, therefore relaying back to Deku's message that you can still give a helping hand to those that are not too far gone. You can reform society for the better. Now whilst this is all going on, everyone needs to go go to the hospital to heal. But meanwhile, Deku's like, I can't think about the hospital. I only have one thought in my mind, and that was All For One. The chapter then fast forwards a bit in time, and we see a bunch of heroes alongside Deku outside All For One's hideout in the Hybori forest. Deku busts open the door like a Chad and he begins to walk in. The building, however, was completely vacant. The silence was broken when a voice speaks out. Through a projection, All For One speaks out, mocking Deku, asking if he enjoyed his question and answer session with Lady Nagant, where All For One reminds us how big brain he really is. Like, our guy is around 150 years old, if I must remind you. He's playing chess while these heroes are playing checkers. All For One mentions how he anticipated Deku would activate his protagonist powers with this quirk of talk no bullshit on Nagant, and he wouldn't have it within himself to abandon someone like her, right? So at this point, we see another side to All For One, as with this interaction, it seems as though he is trying to reason with Deku, giving his perspective. All For One for now sees Deku as his direct rival. Deku leveled up in his point of view, being worthy for a dialogue. He goes on to tell Deku that he did not force Lady Nagant to do what she was doing, rather it was her decision, repeating the same rhetoric he did with his brother we see in chapter 193. He gives a choice to his followers, helping them in their problems. In return, they stay loyal to him, later protecting his goals. All For One goes on to state how the people who fall are the ones labeled as villains. This ideology is actually very true, as the failures of society who do not conform to the norm or have moments of mental weakness are shamed instead of given a support system. All For One mentions how there is no such meaning behind taking pride in your individualism and quirks, as at the end of the day, we live in a controlled society, and if you do not fit in, then you will be excluded. This exclusion brings rise to the villains the heroes are set to fight and ultimately oppress. All For One adds that this system is instilled within the nature of us humans. Regardless of quirks, there are no exceptions. It doesn't matter if we live in a democracy or dictatorship, the origin is all the same. All For One stating that this was an issue even before the first traces of society emerged goes to show how much he studied human behavior, separating his own emotions from it, and deduced the perpetual cycle of hatred that forms from discarding the misfits, abnormal and weird from society. Fundamentally, this means that being unique is a problem if it goes outside the boundary that determines what the limits of the uniqueness is. This also goes back to the concept of quirks, as the name itself implies a peculiar aspect of a person's character or behavior, peculiar being strange, odd and unique. All For One understood that no matter what, humans will never come to unconditionally accept everyone for who they are or want to be. In a dictatorship, the leader will enforce his own ideals on the masses, creating his boundaries determined by his perspective. In a democracy, the majority will decide the norm and limits. Though this seems the most advanced process of governing, the reality is that there still be the minority who are not being heard. Along with that, behind the scenes, even in a democracy, there will always be those in power controlling how they want society to be ran. They have control over the media, control over enforcement organizations, along with secret services tying loose ends behind the public's back. So in the end, order and acceptance is just a facade, leaving All For One to believe that chaos is the answer, taking us back to chapter 193, where he told his brother that chaos he's creating will end up bringing true order. This brings it back to our world. All For One ends his speech telling Deku that he took a thorny path, and the more he fights, the more his spirit will be worn down. And to reinforce the point on how All For One sees Deku as his main opponent, he says that in prison, he never once stopped thinking about him, and how he no longer has an interest in All Might. Deku is next. As this holographic projection ends, the mansion blows up. Now obviously Deku's alert quirk must have kicked in and saved everyone. We will see what happens next week, but that's everything I wanted to explain for this chapter. Now you understand All For One's ideology, his whole mentality, the philosophy. Join me next time and I'll see you. Bye bye.